He's the president of the Who Needs Him Club, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And Joe Joyce falls into that category, absolutely and irrefutably, because I think he gives anybody problems in this division. The lot of them.
Yeah, I
think
agree.
all of them would sit there with a bit of reticence, going, "What do we need this guy for?" You know, you've got to hit him with a cricket bat to even get him moving back an inch.
Sure.
Welcome to episode 5 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and the diminutive Spencer Oliver. Nice to see you, Spencer. I lied gainly. How are you this week? Are you fit? Are you healthy? Are you able to last a full show? Did anyone carry you up?
I suppose my answer,
really care,
Simon,
but
I was going to say
like
my answer is, do you care? And if you do care, I'll tell you how I am.
No, I care to the point that, you know, it's one of those ways of buying some time into a show and seeing how you are. And you know deep down,
I'm back.
Really
I'm back on the mend. Just to say that I'm back on the end. It was rock. It was touch and go there for a while, but
back on
thankfully,
fine form, whatever fine form is, as far as you're concerned.
I'm on the mend. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, as always, an eventful week, and we'll get to certain aspects of the week, and we'll talk about Dimitri Bivol's performance against Gilberto Ramirez, which was outstanding. But like most times in these shows, there's a format that we set out, which is that we talk about 3 subjects. We talk about topical events that are going on during the course of the week, and they're broken down into 3 different subjects. And then we go into a question and answer for those that haven't watched the show. And again, I don't want to keep telling you, we're on episode 5 now. Go back and watch the first 4 and get to episode 5 with us now. I want to start off, or we should start off, because we were going to touch upon it last week and we didn't. Obviously, there's a lot of noise around the heavyweight division again, because Tyson's out to fight Derek Chisora. As underwhelmed as I am by that. We've got some noise coming from Anthony Joshua. But we haven't spoken about the elephant in the room, literally in size, Joe Joyce.
Yeah.
And where things might land for him and what's on his immediate future. Frank Warren was talking about a game plan of a world title shot in the middle of next summer, right, which leaves us between September September the 24th, he thought, didn't he, against Joe Parker? September to the summer for Joe Joyce, and you'd expect him to get out at least once, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think Frank's talking about late February for that.
Right.
He's talking about him getting out late February against the top 10 opponent. The problem you got, Simon, and the danger is, as we've seen in the past, that these guys, once they hit this level, and we know all the titles are tied up at the moment with Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury, so they're tied up, so they have to box the next best available opponent whilst they're at this stage, and that's the difficulty for, you know, people like Joe Joyce, who could be waiting for his shot a lot longer than, trust me, than the summer of 2023, because as we've seen with, like, let's use Dillian Whyte as an example, he was kept out of the picture for like the best part of 3 years.
Do you think, I mean, just jumping ahead of the original question, which is who Joe Joyce is going to fight, if Frank Warren is going to make this fight and this road plan for Joe Joyce, and he's got a foot in 2 camps, and if it's Tyson Fury, wouldn't you think that's almost linear? I don't mean in terms of the belts. I mean it's an easy fix for Frank to make, where he's got 2 fighters in the same camp. Yeah. Wouldn't that be an easier outcome if Tyson Fury overcomes Usyk, which I personally think he will? Yeah. I think he'll overcome Derek Chisora at Canter, which is why I'm not the slightest bit interested in going, and people can hold me to this. You won't be seeing me on the December the 3rd at Derek Chisora versus Tyson Fury. I have no intention of going, because I'm not going to be a hypocrite that subsequently turns around and goes, no interest in this fight. Don't think it's a fight of any great substance. I understand that Derek will put up a great performance, but I'm not going.
Well,
so,
I'll be there commentating.
Good for you.
And Derek's in my gym. Yep, and he's got some good sparring going on at the moment.
And I'm sure he will.
And I'm going to get into a little bit of that as well.
But you also don't think that Derek Chisora is going to win this fight?
No.
So I don't want to go to fights with foregone conclusions, but that's perhaps a different discussion.
Heavyweight boxing.
But going, I get it. That it can change in the blink of an eye, but I don't think Tyson Fury would be taking this fight if he felt there was any real jeopardy in it. No,
but it's like you could, to use a different fight as an example, you could say that about Alexander Povetkin when he boxed Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte thought that was a foregone conclusion, and we saw what happened with that. Actually, that was probably the best knockout I've ever seen.
Granted, but if you're going to draw a parallel between Dillian Whyte and Tyson Fury, I think that's a fool's errand. Tyson Fury is at the elite end of the division. I'm just using it as an example. What I'm saying is heavyweight boxing, things can happen. That's what I'm saying. So like nothing's a foregone conclusion. Yes, obviously he's an overwhelming favourite, Fury, but what I'm saying is he still can't take his eye off the ball. This is as near to a foregone conclusion as you're going to get.
I agree.
So from that point of view, I think it lacks. I don't care who doesn't like it. I think it lacks integrity, because if it's as near to a foregone conclusion as you can get, and no one's demanding for sort of Fury Chisora 3, then it's just a tune-up fight. I guess they'll sell it. But going back to Joe Joyce, who I think that it will be easier to make a fight for Joyce against Fury, because Frank represents both fighters.
I agree. Yeah,
right? And if he's laid out a plan, Frank Warren, then he needs to be held accountable to it, because if he doesn't deliver it, then people should be on his back in the same way they're on Eddie Hearn's back or anyone else's back when they don't deliver something. But the question is, for Joe Joyce, you call it, and it's a great analogy, you say he's the president of the Who Needs Him club. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And Joe Joyce falls into that category, absolutely and irrefutably, because I think he gives anybody problems in this division, the lot of them.
Yeah, I
think
agree.
all of them would sit there with a bit of reticence going, what do we need this guy for? You know, you've got to hit him with a cricket bat to get him moving back an inch.
Sure.
But who does he fight next? Because I think we've both spoken to Frank Warren, and I think what Frank has talked about a top 10 ranked fighter inside the WBO, and I'm assuming that's because he's ranked number one contender in WBO, and if he doesn't play the game with WBO rankings, he's not going to get his shot at the WBO title. Right?
Sure.
I'm assuming there's the politics behind that.
Yeah.
Who are we talking about then inside the rankings? Because we can't be talking about Ruiz and people of that nature, because they've got shots being lined up elsewhere.
Yeah.
Hergovic has got a shot being lined up for the IBF, hasn't he?
Yeah, Hergovic is there. But what I'm
both
saying,
of those are out.
But why they've all got these shots lined up? They're all in the same position as Joe Joyce, because all the belts are tied up with Alexander Usyk and obviously Tyson Fury. So whilst that happens, that's what I'm saying. These guys have all got to sort of get in the mix and fight each other. So you've got your Hergovic's.
Wouldn't they be in the final eliminator stage for a shot at an IBF or a WBC? Whereas hasn't Joe Joyce done that kind of against Joseph Parker? Wasn't that it?
He has, but they're in that situation where why the belts are tied up, they've got to fight, and they want those big fights. And I think that Joyce is welcoming them fights as well, because he still needs that experience, and he proved against Parker that he's still very much improving, even at a late age of 35, 36. He's
37, isn't he?
Is he 37? Yeah, or wherever he is. I know he's no spring chicken, but he's still improving. Didn't start boxing until he was like 22. So look, them fights like your Hergovic's, your Frankie Sanchez. Who else have we got in there? You got Deontay Wilder's obviously on the comeback.
Frank Sanchez, everyone goes snooze fest. What do you want to see that for? Have you actually watched him, Simon? Have you spent any time watching Frank Sanchez?
Sanchez
I have
can
watched
fight.
a bit of time, but I keep on being told, first of all, you haven't watched him. Second of all, if you have watched him, what you're advocating for, because it's boring.
Well, listen, it's rankings. That's what it is, and Sanchez is in them rankings, and actually
Wallen?
he can fight.
What about Wallen?
Otto Wallen is a recognisable name and a good name to fight, and I think that Wallen. I thought that fight with Anthony Joshua was going to possibly happen next. That doesn't look likely now, because it looks like Jermaine Franklin's boxing Dillian White on the 26th of November, and I think the winner of that is going to box Anthony Joshua probably early March. So I think Otto Wallen is a great name. You pulled that out there, to be fair. He's over sparring with Derek Chisora at the moment, and he's a decent opponent.
He's 0-1 because Dillian gave him the bum rush, didn't he? And
Yeah.
moved him aside when he got an opportunity to fight Tyson Fury. So he got sort of elbowed out, even though Dillian White was injured. And to make that fight, and then readily available a few weeks later to make the Tyson Fury fight. But talking about Joe Joyce, because, I used the analogy that you used a moment ago, and repeatedly you, so I've nicked it and I've utilised it in other spaces, so it's yours, and I'm going to give it to you back for the purpose of this conversation, but I nick it and claim credit all the time somewhere else. The president of the Who Needs Him fan club, or the Who Needs Him club, which is Joe Joyce, let's move into the world where he's going to fight these guys. And he's going to fight perhaps Wilder, and he's going to fight Fury, and he's going to fight Usyk, and he's going to fight Joshua. How do you think, more pertinently, that he's going to fare when he eventually gets his opportunities? Because they won't be able to duck him forever. And no one's ducking him at the moment, right? But no one's making that fight, right? And everyone's looking at it going, well, we don't need that, right? But how do you think he'll fare in each and every case, starting with AJ, moving on to Fury, getting on to Usyk, and getting into Wilder?
I think with all of those guys, Wilder, he carries that one-punch knockout power so that he could take you out at any time. And Joyce, as we know, does come forward, get hit.
Do you think you can knock him out?
Well, this is the point. I'm not sure, because what I witnessed on September the 24th, when you was talking about the Joseph Parker fight, is I witnessed something where he just went up in my estimation again. Where because we watched him, Christian Hammer, the fight before, and I looked at him and I thought, Joe's not going to be ready for these top tier opponents. What he done to Joseph Parker was incredible. He just he made Parker gasp by the third round, and Parker said himself afterwards he was just so physically strong. But actually, there's a little bit of boxing IQ with that as well. And I think he's a tough test for any of those heavyweights out there. And you're right in what you say, Simon. I think that.
Do you think Wilder, Parker hit him with everything but the kitchen sink?
Yeah.
Right? And he hit him squarely, and he took punches that you wouldn't really want a heavyweight to be taking. But Parker doesn't hit.
No.
Like Wilder hits.
No.
So but I don't suppose that Wilder has the boxing acumen that Parker has. So Parker's a better fighter, right?
Yeah.
But let's just assume for this moment in time that Wilder can detonate on Joe Joyce. Do you think that he's got the power based upon what we've seen? We've seen Daniel Dubois wail away at him, not even make a dent. It was like watching Colossus out of X-Men, just walking away from everything. We've seen Joseph Parker do the same thing. And the only thing we saw Joe doing was having a little breathe over the ropes in the 8th round before he went and finished him in the next 2 rounds later. Do you think Wilder's got the power, given the fact we've made such a production out of this concussive power, and it allowed Fury to get off the floor a couple of times, but given that we accept this concussive power, do you think Wilder puts a dent in him?
I think that Wilder has got the potential to knock him spark out with the power that he's got. That is for sure. I think that Deontay Wilder has this freakish power that if he connects right... See, with Deontay Wilder, he's one of those ones, when you've seen him knock out, people in the past, like Dominic Brazil, let's use him as an example. When he lands a shot and it lands clean, because with Deontay Wilder, he lets the shot go, but he doesn't he doesn't pick a spot and let the shot go. He just wows it like he's in a pub car park having a scrap. He's one of those. It just lets it go, and if it lands clean and in the right spot, you'll get knocked out. It doesn't matter.
Fury got up. Yeah, and do you think Tyson's? I mean, we don't know this to be the fact, but do you think Tyson Fury's got the same punch resistance as Joe Joyce appears to have?
Well, I think that Tyson Fury proved that he's got he's got unbelievable.
Or that there's an element of myth behind how hard Deontay Wilder punches.
Well, no, I don't think there's an element of myth. I think that's a proven thing. I think that Deontay Wilder has freakish power, and if he connects right, I think he can knock any man out. But
there's nothing we've seen in
would
Joe
he be
Joyce.
able to sustain the pressure from Joe Joyce? Because this is the thing that burns these guys out. That's why it's interesting, because where Joyce closes the gap and closes the space down, Deontay Wilder's the type of guy that needs a lot of space to accelerate in and let those big shots go. Joyce closes that space down. So I'm not sure that Deontay would be given the time and the space to get off of those shots. Joyce might be in his face too much. So who would win that fight? Wow, that's a tough call, That's a really tough call. I'm going to lean towards Joyce right now. I'm going to lean towards Joyce maybe just now, just with the momentum that he's got at the moment. I know Deontay Wilder had a good win just recently. He's come back with a good win, but we still didn't find out too much about how much damage...
Helenius.
Yeah, Helenius is what I'm saying. Okay. So we still don't find out how much damage really that trilogy with Tyson Fury took out of him.
And I know this is going to be slightly controversial, given the state of Anthony Joshua's position at this moment in time, but I think a lot of them beat him. I think Fury beats Wilder clearly because he's done it. Obviously, that's statement bleeding obvious. And I think he beats him again if there was ever to be a fourth one.
Yeah.
I think Joshua beats him. Yeah. Joshua's on his A game. Well, you wouldn't because you're his mate.
Yeah. Stylistically, I think he does anyway. Okay. Yeah.
And I think Joyce beats him.
Yeah.
Right. Joyce against Fury. No, let's get back. Joyce against Joshua first. Let's get to Fury.
That's the one. Joyce against Joshua. That's a tough fight as well. That's a tough one to call. They've got history. They box as amateurs. With Joshua knocks him out in a round actually, as an amateur. But then Joe Joyce was not at the level that Anthony Joshua was back then. Yeah, so he's got that psychological damage that Joyce would have to overcome, because it wasn't that he could have been beat on points. He did get knocked out. So that's a tough call. I think right now, Joshua probably wins that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like I say,
I don't know. I feel like I need to chip in, but I don't feel like I'm able to chip on that one because I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's right.
With Anthony Joshua, I have these reservations about him, and I've been quite vociferous about. Yeah, I have an admiration for the fact that he did go in and try to close the gap, with Usyk did take that fight, and a lot of people would have had him run away from it. I do think he's sensible not fighting Fury right now. I do think that's the right game plan. You know, people can be critical of Eddie Hearn about how much involvement he had in not making that fight and how much maybe people at 258 had influenced Anthony Joshua to change his mind. But I think that's smart money because I think there's no reason for Anthony Joshua to go racing back into that ring. Fury reeled him in. Reeled him in, and we'll take it away from you. We'll make it 60-40. Yeah. Well, he'll make it 60-40 because you know that the Anthony Joshua Express brings a financial pay packet that makes 60-40 better than 80-20 if it wasn't Anthony Joshua. Well, I get all that.
Yeah, they're talking Fury now, aren't they? Like no later than February the 18th and no earlier than March the 4th for the Tyson, for the...
Who, Joshua?
No, sorry.
Oh, Usyk.
For the Usyk fight. So they're talking about that.
When?
So they're talking about no earlier than February the 18th, and no later. I
thought they wanted it by the end of March.
No later than March the 4th. That's what they're talking. That's when they're talking about making that Usyk fight.
Usyk's driving that a little bit now, isn't he?
Yeah, that's it. Usyk, Usyk wants that fight as well. So. And Anthony Joshua has just announced that he probably won't be boxing before March now. Yeah. So that's quite interesting because if those fights all take place around the same sort of time, I think Anthony Joshua boxes the winner of Dillian White and Franklin. Jermaine Franklin. So that's where I think that Joshua boxes the winner of that, and the winner of that maybe boxes the winner of the other game. But listen, we've been talking about that for a couple of years now. We let you know that this is how the landscape is meant to pan out, but sort of we never seem to get it.
But again, I make the point, and a lot of ridicule has been put upon the Hearn and 258 management for not making this fight. I think it's a smart move because why would you put him back in now? Despite the fact that the fighter's got the balls to do it, and we know he's got the balls to do it, we know he's got the balls to go in there, and despite the fact that Tyson Fury's reeled him in, as I said a moment ago, with a 60-40 split, what's the problem here? Well, you can give him 60-40 on a purse that you know is going to be far bigger than an 80-20 split on a lesser fight, right? So don't make out like you're being so generous.
How dangerous do you think that is, though, if Anthony Joshua comes through, if Dillian White comes through this fight against Franklin, he gets the Anthony Joshua fight in March. How dangerous do you think that is for Anthony Joshua? Because stylistically, he's always caused problems for Joshua.
I want to go back to Joe Joyce and fighting these two in a minute, but we'll just go to that point.
Yeah.
I think it depends entirely the framework of Anthony Joshua's mind. You know, I was listening to him, which put my feet to sleep, talking about KSI, which is your fault, by the way, and how much he admired KSI and this, that, and the other. But he looks quite calm. But you hear the backstory is that he has acknowledged the fact that he's had a little bit of turmoil. Yeah. And that it's impacted upon him psychologically. He needs some momentum. So going in against a Dillian White now, I don't know what Dillian White we've got left, right? Because Dillian White in the fight against Fury was deeply unimpressive. Yeah. And I'd reached a level where I thought he'd make more of a fight of it. And it's easy for me to say I haven't got to step through the ropes and I've never done this and I've never done that. I understand that. But you can look at things and you can see things for what they are. And he stepped up to a level that he's not at.
Just showed you how good Fury is.
And that's realisation for him. So that changes the motivation for Dillian White now because he knows he's not at that level, perhaps. Yeah, sure. Right? And what does it become about now? Perhaps it becomes about something very similar to what Derek Chisora's doing, which is getting paid for big fights. I don't know. That's me being maybe going off on a tangent. I think if I will only be able to answer this question properly after we've seen Dillian White fight and see what's left of him. I suspect he'll beat this guy. I'm looking at this guy's record. It's not something that particularly tells you that one needs to have to start with a knees knocking.
He's sparring with Fury at the moment. He's one of Fury's sparring partners. Don't know too much about Jermaine Franklin, if I'm honest. I know he's unbeaten. Yeah. No names on his record. Nothing on his record.
There's nothing on his record.
So,
hang on. Yeah. I mean, we saw that last on the weekend, didn't we? We saw Gilberto Ramirez fighting with a big record, but if you look at the record, there's no names on it. And you saw the levels in the people, and we'll get onto that in a second. I think it's a risk fight, but he seems to want it. Yeah. And there seems to be this propensity forever and a day, and there's been only a few exceptions, where most heavyweights that have lost a big fight and have lost their belts have gone away and got a tune-up. There seems to be a zero scant tolerance of Anthony Joshua being able to do that, or someone else to be that, or even in this instance, me being quite disrespectful or disengaged of the Chisora Fury fight. It's a warm-up fight. We know what it is. He doesn't really want to fight Derek Chisora. He wants to fight Alexander Usyk, but he can't make that fight. So what's he going to do in the meantime? Put himself in a way of jeopardy? I get it all. But going back around again, back to where we were starting from, which was Joyce. We've now got the last two fights of the Joyce scenario. You've now suggested that he can beat Wilder. He loses to Joshua. Yeah. Right? And so that must mean that he's subsequently, if he fought Fury and he fights Usyk, then he's going to lose those fights too.
No, I think that if Joe Joyce boxed Alexander Usyk, he would beat Usyk. I think he'd be too big and too strong, and I think that he may beat Usyk.
How are you making that case then?
I'm going to tell you now, and I think that if he boxed Tyson Fury would be too experienced, know how to tie him up, and too much talent and everything else, just because of his size and everything else. But the reason that I say that there's a chance he could beat Usyk, and Usyk might just box his ears off and just do what he does so well. But what I was saying is that why I'd give him a chance in that one is just because of his sheer size, how he controls the space, how he cuts the ring down. Derek Chisora showed us the blueprint on how to beat Alexander Usyk, as in he went forward and he was doing all right for a few rounds. Yes, Usyk worked him out and pulled away.
Do you buy this story, by the way, cutting across you for a second, that Usyk went into that fight, showed less of himself than ultimately people felt that he had to offer, because he was luring Joshua into a trap?
Never bought that in a million
Can't do
years.
It, can you?
You don't do that. Listen, I know as an ex-fighter that you don't. There's no way that anyone goes in there and goes, "Oh, I'm just going to take it easy to try and get this big fight," because the reality is you can get knocked sparks out, and especially heavyweights at any one point. And I think that he was surprised by Derek's strength and the way that because Derek's one of them guys that just keeps coming, and he showed the blueprint on how to beat Usyk, and I think that, Usyk has developed now, now he's sort of had a few more heavyweight fights. He's developed into a better heavyweight, a bigger heavyweight than what he was when he boxed Derek Chisora, because I think that was his second fight as a heavyweight.
Has he? Do you think he has, or has he just landed very lucky that he got Joshua, who wasn't ready for him?
Well, maybe
ready for what he could bring.
Yeah, maybe.
And it was a perfect style for him in terms of didn't lean on him, didn't put his weight on him, didn't bring the fight to him that a natural heavyweight should have brought to him.
And this is what Joe Joyce would do to him. Yeah. And that's my point. And that's why I say, it's always, at this level, it's about styles, make fights, and styles. One style will beat another one and another one. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, I think Joe Joyce, Usyk, I think that's a good chance Joyce could win that. But Joe Joyce, Joshua,
Fury.
I'm not sure.
So you think he gets beat by he gets beat by Fury, he could beat Usyk, loses to Joshua, beats Wilder.
Yeah.
So there's his roadmap. Then, right?
Basically.
Don't fight Joshua.
Yeah. Well,
hope Fury gets beat by Usyk, but I get Usyk.
But at the same time, though, I think that, like I say, where all the marbles are tied up, wherever they are.
But they're not going to be forever.
No, they're not going to be forever. But these guys are not getting younger either. All the heavyweights that we've talked about there, like you mentioned Dillian Whyte, Joe Joyce's age, Anthony Joshua. I reckon...
Hey, George Foreman fought for a heavyweight title at 45 years of
age.
I
think these guys in another 2 or 3 years will be all coming to the end. These guys, these top tier heavyweights, I think they'll all be coming to the end of their careers, like Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, maybe another couple of years in all of them.
Okay, well, fascinating times and lots of conundrums.
Absolutely.
In there. Let's move on to another division that I think is absolutely intriguing, and one that's littered with British interest. Is the light heavyweight division, one which got great pedigree because obviously the great John Conte fought that division and was a real star in his time. Over the weekend, we saw a fight. It was, in to some extent, I thought that Gilberto Ramirez, I'm obviously talking about Dimitri Bivol versus Gilberto Ramirez. And Eddie Hearn put that fight on. And we've got a guy that's gone in with 44 fights, an unbeaten record. We've got Dimitri Bivol that I was asking you, because of his performance against Craig Richards, we saw him beat Joe Smith, and we saw him, obviously, with Saul Alvarez, and he's been elevated to this status. And I said, I questioned last week about, is he a decent fighter being made into something far more compelling than he is? He isn't he?
No, he's not.
Top drawer.
He's the real deal. And I had those same question marks hanging over as well because of.
Well, you should know better. I don't know anything.
Well, I was live at the Craig Richards one, and this is taking nothing away from Richards, but I'm hearing that all about this Dimitri Bivol and how good he is and pound for pound style, right? Yeah. And I watched him and I thought, he looks quite ordinary. And I thought Richards, if he had a bit more self-belief, could have possibly won that night. And I think, last quarter of the fight, Bivol showed his class and he come through. He done what good champions do. Then we got the Canelo Alvarez one, but there's still a question mark because you go, was Alvarez just too small? Yeah. And that was the thing. Then we get this one with Ramirez the other night, and I watched it. And do you know what was the impressive thing, Simon? Was the way that he controlled the space. Like, a lot of people thought that Ramirez was going to be the bigger guy, and he schooled him. He outfought him, he outboxed him, he closed the space, he outpunched him. He won in every department. I thought it was a first-class performance.
I think it was one set of punches, about 13 or 14 unreplied punches.
Incredible.
It was like watching. Yeah. It was like watching Evander Holyfield hit George Foreman at that time 21 times without a response.
Yeah,
You know, it was that level of quality.
Yeah, it was.
But Bivol now is in the space that we alluded to last week, that you corrected me on, and you've now doubled down on. And it was Gilberto Ramirez was an incredible physique in terms of, was he 6'4"?
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know how he makes the weight. I don't know, he's a giant.
Absolutely, but it was different levels there, wasn't it?
Levels, man. It was. Do you know what it was? And I know Ramirez was moaning at the end of the fight, saying that he actually thought he won the fight. He must have been hit a lot more than he realised. I'm hoping that he, you know, went and had a little checkup after that. Then if he's making them sort of comments, because that was a one-sided fight. I think that Bivol controlled it. He chose when to fight. He chose when to box. Like you say, he was throwing combinations, unanswered fight. The foot movement, his foot movement was most impressive. The way he was getting himself in range and out of range. So, top of the range. So he's going to be a tough one to beat, Bivol.
So you've now got, as I said to the top of this little bit of discussion, it's a particular division that we got a lot of interest in. You know, we've got fighters like Josh Boatsi, who I like very much, who was supposed to be out against Jean Pascal recently.
Yeah, that's right.
Problem there. Not wanting to take a drugs test. It was I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's not get into that. And obviously you've got Anthony Yard, who I really like. You know, and he's in that division. I think he's lining up an opportunity to fight Beterbiev, isn't he?
Yeah, Beterbiev, yeah. I think he's out, actually. Yard's boxing, and I don't know if a lot of people know this. I think he's boxing, is it November the 19th or something like that?
I thought his next fight was Beterbiev.
No, I think he's just having a little tune-up fight up in Telford somewhere. I'm sure it was November the 19th.
Because the last time he was out was avenging the Lyndon Arthur defeat, in which he just...
But Beterbiev's the one that's on, is the next... His world title shot.
So he's slated to fight him next, is he?
Yeah, but I think he's going to have a little tune-up in between.
Right.
Yeah, so, he is. I know he is. I know he's boxing.
So what do we make to that fight?
He's boxing in November sometime in a little tune-up.
So what do we make to the opportunity of Anthony Yards? I like Anthony Yards.
Yeah.
I like him as a fella, and I like him as a fighter.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him in another world title shot. You know, he had a shot early on in his career against... Kovalov, wasn't it?
Yeah, Kovalev, yeah.
And did okay, didn't he? He did okay. He came out with credit, but you need to come out with wins.
Yeah, well,
a good fight
inexperience let him down. He had Kovalev done in the 8th round, gassed himself, and I think he learnt a lot from that. And he come back, and we had that lockdown where he lost to Lyndon Arthur, but he righted the wrong. More
than righted it.
Yeah,
but looking at that fight, if that's the case. In this light heavyweight division, how do you see it shaking up? You've got Dmitry Bivol over here.
Yeah.
You've got Beterbiev over here. And I've got to talk to you about who do you think is better of those two fighters in a second. You've got Anthony Yard, you've got Josh Boatsi chasing these guys. They've got to be looking for world title shots in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah.
Both of them. Actually, we're talking about if Yard's going to fight Beterbiev, he's getting a world title shot.
Yeah.
You know, Boatsi must be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
What do you make of this division? How's it going to shake up and play out? And who's better, Bivol or Beterbiev?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Again, like this, you know, these are one of those that we never really get the answer. We've all got the opinion, but we never get an answer until they box. Who do I think is better out of Bivol and Beterbiev? Beterbiev's the monster of the division.
Yep.
He's the monster of the division, but he doesn't just go in there and use his strength and his power to take people out. There's actually a bit of IQ in there as well. He's got good ring craft as well. He's very good. I think for me, at the moment, Bivol would probably come out on top. I'm gonna lean towards Bivol on top. Beterbiev's going to be tough to beat, though. Our English boys, you know, the Boatsis who you mentioned, Anthony Yard and all that. I mean, Beterbiev and Bivol for me are here.
Our levels, yeah.
They're here, right? And then you got your next tier of fighters, which is your Joshua Boatsis, Anthony Yards. Yards a little bit more experienced than Boatsi. Boatsi's not had that experience at that level really at the moment, but. Them boys have still got a way to go to reach. I think Beterbiev and Bivol, whatever way you want to put them, 1 and 2, whatever way.
So what's beneath?
They're the main two of the division.
What's beneath? I mean, you know, when we were talking about Conor Benn recently about his progress, right, before the Eubank debacle, right, and we were talking about Conor fighting perhaps David Avanesian, or fighting Keith Thurman, or fighting one of the Garcias beneath that level before they got to Errol Spence, before they got to Terence Crawford, right? That sort of level. Right? So there's the Terence Spence, Errol Spence, Terence Crawford level. Then there's the next level down, which is Keith Thurman and Garcia.
They're your pound for pound stars.
So in the light heavyweight, is there a category for Boatsi and Anthony Yard to jump into before they can be considered? Able to take on Beterbiev, even though I know that Anthony's taken on Beterbiev. Is there another level beneath Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol and above Buatsi and Yard? Is there another level, or have they got to go straight to?
No, I think that they want to be with like your Joe Smiths and those type of guys that have been there before and maybe slightly on the decline, but are good names on the resume. They just need that a little bit more experience. I think that. Listen, Yard's been around a while now. Buatsi's sort of like just coming up in that. There's no rush for these guys, but I think they've got the potential, but they still need to have those how the coming of age fights. That's what I'm going to say. Coming of age fights, and like your Bivol and your Beterbievs, they're elite level, man. Yeah. They are like the guys to beat. So maybe another fight or two at that level, like sort of like your sort of world class level.
Can you see Josh fighting for a world title in 2023? Or can you see a reason, and answer both questions, can you see a reason why Buatsi and Yard might fight before? I mean, obviously, if Yard goes in, wins a world title against Beterbiev, then maybe Buatsi would go that route, right? And you get a Battle of Britain. If he goes in and loses to Beterbiev but puts up a really good performance, right, a really compelling performance, could you see the reason for Buatsi-Yard fights? So 2 questions. Can one of these guys win a world title in 2023? I think also, can they fight one another?
I think one of these can win a world title in 2023, depending on which route they take, what titles are available.
Which one? Tell me.
Yeah, I think they've got the ability to. But what I think you're right, you hit the nail on the head, Simon. I think what needs to be done with them two, I think that would be a great fight, like a final eliminator, to box either Beterbiev or to box Bivol. Them two having it out themselves because they're at that level, and I think then the winner could that would put them in good stead to go. Yeah, and that would put them in good stead, and I think that would be a great route for both of those guys to take. I think that would be the fight to make. Let them box each other, find out who's the better of the two there, and then go on and challenge either Bivol or Beterbiev, or let Bivol and Beterbiev slug it out and take the winner of that. That's what I'd probably do.
Yeah, a bit like the argument of waiting for Errol Spence to fight Terence Crawford and pick up what's left of one of those fighters if they've.
So I reckon leave them two to
all in all, another intriguing weight class with a lot of British interest in it. Ricky Hatton.
Yes.
The return of the hitman. And Ricky's fighting Marco Antonio Barrera, isn't he?
Yeah.
At the weekend.
Yeah. On Saturday night.
2 things. What do you think of that?
Yeah.
But where do you think Ricky sort of stands amongst the best British fighters of all time?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of the fights? I mean, Barrera we've seen come over here in 2009, fight Amir Khan. Amir Khan used him to rebuild some of the reputation that he might have lost through a couple of fights that he had. That didn't go his way. But Barrera's a legend.
Yeah, he is.
Right?
He is.
So, I mean, I've seen Ricky in the gym. I also saw him in not the greatest state.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the Kell Brook Amir Khan fights, sort of wandering down the road, and I felt a little bit sad that he was wandering down the road with a group of people trying to get in a cab, and obviously wasn't in the best nick. But seeing the footage of him, he looks
great,
fit and sharp. And what do you think of the overall premise of the fight?
Do you know what, Simon? I loved the fight, and people will question this. And listen, it's not about financial gain for Ricky Hatton. He's financially secure, as is Marco Antonio Barrera. This is all about him needing some focus, right? We understand that he's got mental health issues outside of boxing. He's struggled to come to terms with life outside of boxing. When a boxer gives up boxing, he loses his identity, and then they've got to find a different direction in life and a different focus in life. And some of them struggle with that. And I know Ricky does the training and whatnot.
I think it's the same with a lot of sports people.
Yeah,
it's the same with a lot of people in the public eye. It's the same with rock stars. When the lights come down, right? No one's telling them how much they love them. they become yesterday's news. And it's incredibly difficult time.
Yeah, when they fall into that becoming a normal civilian, that's what he's struggled with in the past, I think. And I think this has been really good for Ricky. One, it's given his focus. And let me tell you, on Saturday night, you are not going to see, don't think you're going to get Ricky Hatton of old. You're not going to get that. This is a sparring exhibition. Yeah. This is a chance for, if people go to this show and they watch the fight, they just got to sit there and appreciate this is a chance to see 2 boxing legends get back in the ring again, appreciate the ring walk, appreciate everything else. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be no more than a sparring session, but it's going to be a bit of fun. But I think it's good for Ricky. I understand why he's doing it. I've spoke to him about this as well, on why he chose to do it, and it was just like, it was for that. I need that focus. I need that little bit of discipline in my life. And look what it's done for him. He's in incredible shape.
Yeah. Does it help or hinder his son? Because I do think his son's been given a couple of opportunities that he wouldn't have been given if he hadn't been Ricky Hatton's son.
Oh.
But again, Ricky Hatton's back in the focus again, and ultimately it makes it about Ricky Hatton. Do you think, and I'm going to go off a little bit of a tangent here, that Campbell would be better served not having to have the Campbell-Hatton name, or does it just mean that's the cards he's been dealt?
It's just the cards he's been dealt. You know, we've got it with Chris Eubank Jr, haven't we? We've got it with Conor Benn. You know, like when your dad's a boxing legend, you always got to fight to come out of the shadows of them guys. And Ricky Hatton,
and you have the advantage to go with it.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to come out of that. And he's always going to get compared to his dad, which is unfortunate for the kid, because as we saw on Saturday night when he boxed and he had a first round victory, albeit against a guy that was not particularly good, but the finish was first class. Like his old man, left up to the body.
Because I've been a little bit resistant, because I think fighters, there's been bills that he's been on, specifically in Gibraltar, that he, with due respect, he had no business being on.
I agree.
And other fighters have earned more rights to be in those situations, and I thought that was a little bit unfair. I'm not blaming the kid for this, because you take the opportunities that you're given. But on those bills, he's come out, and you're thinking there's fighters that have grafted, that are nicking a living, trying to find a way onto these bills. And because of who you're related to, you're getting an opportunity.
Well, you know, it's life, isn't it? It's
That's
like,
life,
you know,
but I think it should also be said, because there should be fairness and equality in life.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, I think this is great for Ricky Hatton. Like this, I'm speaking about it from as a person. I think it's a really good thing for Ricky to be doing what he's doing, just for his mental state of mind and just for his physical side as well.
But there is a point in his life where he's not going to be able to do this, and he's going to have to find a solution to those particular problems, isn't he? Because he isn't going to be able to go back into the ring to find a.
Well, hopefully, off the back of this, it may give him that bit. You know, I've heard him speaking in the build up to this as well, saying, wow, when I look at myself now and look at what state I was in, hopefully he's seen what sort of state he was in, and he may be able to keep a little bit of that discipline now, because that's all it takes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Ricky Hatton is a name that sparks out in people's minds, but for those that didn't see him, and if we've got people that are slightly younger that didn't get to see what Ricky Hatton achieved and the manner in which he achieved it, this was a lightning rod for British boxing. This was somebody that took ridiculous amounts of fans around the world. This is somebody that fought all the best fighters in his division at their prime, none of them. This is somebody that, I was fortunate enough to go to that fight, and I think you were too, weren't you?
Yeah,
because we spoke about it last week. 2005 at the old MEN. And the atmosphere, and I had no skin in the game. I hold my nose when I go up to the north, joking. And the atmosphere was phenomenal. So Ricky Hatton was one of those phenomenons in British boxing, and I think British sport does it better than anybody else. I remember going to watch it. I'm going off tangent again, but I remember going to watch Evander Holyfield versus Lennox Lewis. Right? And the British fans inside Madison Square Garden were dominating the place. It ranged from whatever song they could sing from Lennox Lewis's Walking in the Winter Wonderland to Who Ate All the Pies when Don King came up. And all the Yanks could come back with, it was USA. So the British fans are unique. But Hatton's fans, amongst unique fans, were unique amongst the unique, weren't they?
20,000, I think he took over when he boxed Floyd Mayweather over out in the States. 20,000 British fans travelled over to watch him box there. You can imagine the racket they make, and but it was like, the British fans are very, very unique, and I think the Americans actually appreciate that. All the Americans now want to box over here because this is this is where it happens.
Absolutely.
Speaking to a few of them that have just boxed over here recently, speaking to the girls, speaking to Clarissa Shields.
Well, certainly they'll see the opportunity.
But Clarissa Shields said, this is in the atmosphere that you get here is absolutely
and
insane.
The milk and honey for that,
noise and it's like a carnival vibe.
I rented a cinema on the back of around where Café de Paris is in Leicester Square. Took about 10 or 15 of my so-called mates. I had a lot of mates when I was a multi-millionaire football player. Funny that, isn't it? And we all watched it about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. The other part of the question with Ricky, besides drawing attention to the fact that he's got this fight with Barrera and it's going to be of a nature that we need to prepare people for rather than people's expectations, is where do you, and we've got to do this because it's part and parcel to be done. Where does he rank in your mind's eye amongst the list of British great fighters? And just to throw a few names in there, like Kazagi and Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua and Carl Frotz and Lennox Lewis and Prince Nazim Hamid and, of course, Eubank Sr. And we should have Nigel Benn in that list as well.
Absolutely. Don't forget John Conte either.
And
He's
John
another
Conte,
one.
And if we want to put British fighters in there, you could bring Cam Buchanan in, you could bring
Lloyd Hannigan in there. There's loads of them.
Where would you put Ricky in amongst that group?
Right, so I would go for number one. So I'll give you this. Let's do the top 3 or 4. I'm going to go number one. You've got to go with Joe Calzaghe. because of
an unblemished record.
Yeah, unblemished record.
And who he fought.
Went over to the States, beat Bernard Hopkins. You know, if you look at his resume, it's just incredible. Jeff Lacey was that was one of the best performances I've ever seen from a British fighter in a British ring.
Destroyed him.
Incredible. And he was an underdog in that fight as well. Lacey was the big talking point. So I'm going to go Calzaghe 1. I'm going to go... This might be a little bit controversial here, actually, but I think Nazim Hamed would come in as number 2.
He irritated me.
But he was great, mate. I've got a great story.
He irritated me with Steve Jones. It annoyed me.
Yeah.
Because I think that the man deserved a little bit more respect than he gave him.
Oh, who with Steve Robinson?
Steve Robinson.
I agree with that, but you couldn't take away how good he was. Do you know what? I used to box with Naz. We boxed from 13 up until about 18 for England. We travelled all over the world, really, boxing, and I used to spar with him because he was actually lighter than me back in the day. But that kid was so talented. It was incredible, so talented, and I think towards the end he doesn't get the recognition he really deserves because of the way that Barrera beat him.
Because Barrera beat him and he didn't come back.
And he didn't. No, he had one with Manuel Carvo. Was it Manuel Carvo?
Yeah, but he didn't come back Barrera.
No, he didn't. No. The desire had left him then, I think. I think that, the fame, the fortune, and the box, he said the fight had left him, and when the fight leaves someone, you got to respect that. It's gone. So, like, Nazim Hamed...
You want to put him in there, do you? Right.
I want to put Nazim Hamed up there, yeah. I think he was great. He was great. But then you got to go look at I've got people like John Conte and Ken Buchanan because I don't want to just take Lennox Lewis. By the way, sorry, Lennox is going in number 2. Lennox is going in number 2. Naz number 3.
Your mind up. You're buying yourself. You start buying it and selling it back. Okay.
Well, I'm not. I'm just because my mind is opening up. I need time.
Blimey. That'd be a first.
I need time, mate. Okay. Unlike you, this takes me a bit of time, a little bit of process going on. All right. So where have I gone now? So I've gone.
God knows, down a rabbit hole. Right. So we got Lennox Lewis in there.
Yeah, we got Calzaghe 1, Lennox Lewis 2. Yeah. I'm going to go Nazim Hamed 3.
You're going to drop Carl Froch out of this?
No, Froch is there, mate. Let me get there.
How much you want? Would you make a list of 70?
It's this difficult. Help me out. Where are you going?
No, I would go Froch.
You're going to go Froch 3?
I would go Froch in there. Absolutely.
Oh, come on in. I'm going to throw Froch in there. Can we just do a top 5?
I'd go
becoming very
Brian
difficult.
London. Brian London in there.
Most of these
Joe
people,
Bugner, Aussie Joe. He counted for once.
Most of these people won't know what you're talking about when you're throwing those names in. But you've got to look at...
I think what Hunnigan did,
Lloyd Hunnigan,
to go and beat Donald Curry,
you got to throw him in there,
and that run of form when nobody in their right mind apparently gave him a whiff, a scintilla of a chance against Don Curry. I went to that fight. I saw it. I saw what he did to Curry and how shocked Curry was and how badly beaten up he was. And then he went on and he beat Johnny Bumfus and he beat Gene Mad Dog Hatcher, and he went on this insane run of victories that ultimately ended up with him, I think, losing to Marlon Starling, wasn't it? And I saw him fight Mark Breland. There was nothing left of it.
That was when he was derailing.
And that was when he was derailing, Ragamuffin Man. But for me, I think he can be part of that conversation. It's always one of those 100%. Things where you can go, well, you could say Alan Minter, when he won the belt.
I mean, it's how far you want to go back and stuff like that.
What appeals to you over what appeals to someone else. But it's always one of those conversations. But you're going to end up with Lewis.
I'm going to go number 1, Joe Calzaghe, and I'm going to go number 2, Lennox Lewis, right? And then the debate really opens up. But I think them two guys. But like you say, I've totally forgot about Hunnigan.
Make your mind up on the third one, because you get.
So I've got to make the third one up. Yeah,
you get the ownership of this one. So people can point at the screen and laugh at you.
Where do I go with number 3?
What about your mate Anthony Joshua? You won that
fight.
No,
they're still fighting, so I can't put them in there at the moment. Because whilst the Furies and the Joshuas and that, while they're still active, I'm not going to throw them in there.
Okay, then new rules.
Is that all right? Okay, it's not new rules. I'm just, because we don't know what's going to happen to the back end of the career to determine where they're placed in history, legacy, cemented.
Ben.
Nigel
Benn.
I like him. He's in my top 5.
Went over to America, beat Iran Barkley, beat Doug DeWitt.
You're throwing all these names out there. I mean, how long is this show? Because I'm going to be chopping and
filling time. Let's move on to the final part of the show, which is questions for us.
Yeah.
And so the first question is from Jackie. And Jackie asks, what's the best knockout you've ever seen live? I know what mine is. I can go first if you want.
No, I want to go.
Oh, okay, go on.
Just in case yours is the same as mine.
Yeah. Just in case I'll give you some knowledge that you didn't have in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely, because I don't want people thinking I'm coming off the back of you. So, just in case we're the same.
Why would they think that?
Right, so I'm going to go. The best knockout I've ever seen live, and I'll tell you why as well.
Go on.
Because of the surroundings.
Yeah.
It was in lockdown. There was no one there. It was in Eddie Hearn's back garden.
What is it?
It was in August, and it was this really weird. It was a hot week all week, but this one night it was freezing cold. When I say cold, I mean like a winter night. And it was it was a big underdog that won. Alexander Povetkin knocks out Dillian White, and that was. We
could have got to it much quicker than the build-up.
I didn't wanted to set the scene.
Right.
You know, I wanted people, but can I talk about the sound of the punch as well?
Right.
Because there was no one there. It was definitely silent. Yeah. And it looked like Dillian White was getting on top and doing really well. And then out of nowhere, the uppercut, boom, lands. Yeah. But it was like
But it was early in the round, wasn't it?
It was like
he came straight out and got
it was
popped,
like a popping sound. But he was out before he hit the floor. Like, it was totally gone. But it was one of those...
Shall we hear about mine? Because it's probably more interesting.
Yeah, go on.
Mine is the rematch of Hasim Rahman versus Lennox Lewis.
Nice.
And the background noise about how he'd managed to get himself unfit by not being prepared for the fight. He'd gone out to film Ocean's 11. He hadn't got himself into a mode and was very poor in the first fight. And people writing kind of his boxing obituary.
Yeah.
And Lennox Lewis being so focused. And the punch he hit Rahman with was an absolute peach. Yeah. Set him up with left, banged him straight down the middle of the right, knocked him spark out. And I just remember George Foreman's commentary. I was sitting ringside with John McEnroe, which was great. I really liked.
Drop something there, mate.
Yeah, sorry about that. But it was because McEnroe and I both gave the same reaction, which is wow. Right? And Lennox Lewis's reaction, because Lennox has been this fighter that a lot of people, and I'd made the case for it as well, adapted his style of fight to beat the opposition rather than imposing himself on the opposition. But this was a fight that he felt he needed to redeem himself on. Yeah. And for it to have been so convincing and so compelling. And I just remember George Foreman describing it to one of the anchors on one of the American boxing channels about, Lennox Lewis got beat by an ordinary fighter in the first fight, but he made an ordinary fighter look ordinary in the next fight. Yeah. And I just thought that was a great line. Yeah. And it was just such a big shot. And when you sat ringside and you went, whoa.
Can I ask you? Did McEnroe? What was the term that he used?
He was.
You cannot be serious. Did he drop that when that shot landed?
No, he wasn't. He was deeply interested in wanting to talk to me about football.
You cannot all kinds be serious.
Of things. No. But he's a massive boxing fan, so he was like me. All of us were like, wow, oh God.
Yeah. Well, that's what it was like. But that's what it was like when Dillian White got knocked out by Povetkin as well. When that shot landed, it was quite sickening actually. When he went over, I thought, I don't know how long it's going to take to get up from that, because that was a bad shot. That was, and I think it was because there was no sound in the place as well.
We can list the ones that we've seen on television. I remember seeing John Mugabe knock someone out. That was unbelievable. But this is live, so we've answered Jackie's question. It's only about live. Now, James asks, I don't know why this would be a question, but we'll answer anyway for James. Could Fury versus Chisora be the last stadium fight we see in the country for a while?
He's probably saying that because this
everyone's going to be off to the Middle East for a big
Abu Dhabi thing that Eddie Hearn's just done a deal out there, isn't he? And I think that with all these big fights these days, that we're seeing they are all going out to Middle East. We're getting them in Saudi. Yeah. And it's a great question, to be fair, because it is a little bit worrying that I think moving forward... What do you consider a stadium? Do you consider the MEN stadium? No, that's an arena. Okay. So a stadium, I think he's talking about literally football stadiums. Tottenham Hotspur, Wembley. Is there any other stadiums? Well, there's the Millennium Stadium or Principality Stadium. Yeah. And they fight Ellen Road because I think that and at Goodison Park because obviously Tony Bellew fought there, didn't he, when he won the cruiserweight? Yeah. Tottenham Stadium, yeah. Tottenham Stadium, yeah. It's a great stadium, yeah. Wonderful stadium. It is a great stadium. Bit of boxing fights going on than football matches, yeah. So do you think the answer is? I think we will see other stadium fights because I think people see it as an opportunity. We might not see as big a fights as we think we should see in these stadium fights, but there's been a blueprint. There's obviously an appetite for boxing. I agree with you. I think we'll see one again in the summer. Might not be Wembley. It might be a smaller. It might not be Tottenham. It might be Ellen Road for Josh Warrington fighting somebody or someone of that nature. Well, if we do get this Joshua Fury fight, if that does happen. That's not happening. No, but I'm just saying. Do you think it would be a state? Do you reckon it'd be? That's what I'm asking. Do you reckon? Do you reckon it'd definitely be over in the Middle East somewhere? What do you think? Yeah, I do, but I'm just saying. Do you reckon who's going to write a check now? I mean, you know as well as I do that all of a sudden the scale, the lid gets released, and ultimately it becomes a complete. The Saudis,
wanted undisputed, didn't they?
Yeah.
They want undisputed.
They still do,
Qataris might be in the mix now because they're seeing the opportunity there. And tragically, given if it's a fight between two British
Fury
fighters,
Usyk ends up in the Middle East, yeah?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Because for the kind of quantums of money that these guys are able to demand, who's going to write that ticket out?
Yeah, sure.
Who's going to write it out on the back of suggesting that a facility fee's got to be 100 million quid?
Yeah.
Who's going to do that?
Yeah.
It's only going to be these guys. Tragedy that it is. The days of Vegas, but then again, it's very difficult to sell an all-British fight in Vegas anyway.
Yeah, sure.
So this relationship that Eddie Hearn struck up with the Middle Eastern guys, and no doubt Frank Warren has as well, is going to lead people into that place.
Sure.
And it is what it is. Brendan asks, last question. Brendan asks, if you could interview one boxer, past or present, who would it be? And you can't say Conor Benn.
I won't say Conor Benn. And I'd go back, listen, my all-time favourite fighter was obviously Marvin Hagler. So it's something that I would have loved to have interviewed him, just because I think he's a fascinating guy. His background was incredible. But I'm going to say Mike Tyson.
Yeah?
I'm going to say Mike Tyson. Do you know why I'm going to say that? Because I think he had such an impact on me growing up. Right, getting up and listening to him on the radio, etc., etc. And he had this aura about him, Mike Tyson, like no other man that I've ever known before. Yeah, it was incredible.
Menace.
Like when I met him up in Scotland.
I don't mean he's a menace. He became a menace.
Absolutely.
But the menace behind him.
Behind him, yeah. Like when I met him when he boxed Lou Savarese up in Scotland, and we spent a week up.
How many times are you going to tell this story?
Yeah, well, the listeners might not know, mate.
Right, we're down to 6 now.
Do you know how many listeners we're gaining each week?
Losing.
Okay, anyway, that's another
With the same story,
yeah. No, but what I'm saying is when I met him, there was just this aura around him. Like I've never been in someone's presence that had that sort of aura before. So I think,
Can't even take it seriously, can you? I tell you what I'm going to say. I'm going to go off on a tangent here because I'm going to tell you someone I really would love to interview, Bert Sugar.
Bert Sugar,
I would have loved to interview Bert Sugar. Bert, for those of you who don't know, Bert Sugar's a
did you ever meet him?
Old-time. No, I've seen a lot of footage about him.
I met him.
He's an old-time boxing commentator that goes back many, many years. And if you listen to the stories and the relationships he had with Ali and Joe Frazier and George Foreman and people of that nature and the whole pantheon of boxing, a fascinating character. But if I could interview a fighter that was different and that you could have seen something, I would have gone for Sonny Liston. Because the way that he was portrayed, the way that people saw him, the influences behind him, the way that, he wins the world title against Floyd Patterson, lands at an airport expecting everyone to be there, no one's there.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody dislikes him intensely. Cassius Clay comes along, or Muhammad Ali as he became, and they wanted him to beat Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, because of the noise and size of his mouth and his attitude and outlook, and of course subsequently later on in his career because of his religious leanings. But the bottom line is Liston. What an insight!
Yeah,
what an insight into this heavyweight champion of the world that at the time was considered to be the Mike Tyson of his time.
He was the baddest man on the planet.
And they've all based themselves upon it. Tyson based himself upon it. Other people have gone into boxing and based themselves upon Sonny Liston. So I would go Bert Sugar purely and simply because of this encyclopedic knowledge of boxing and the stories that fella must have had.
I met
Sonny
Bert
Liston
Sugar
because it would have been something very different.
Yeah.
Something very different. And of course, you're always going to say Muhammad Ali, aren't you? That's not an interview.
That's why I didn't do it. That's why I didn't do it, because I didn't want to get hammered on there.
No.
Because all my comments have been very good on here. I mean, I know you've had a few bad ones, but mine have all been quite solid.
Okay.
From what I've seen.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm pleased that I want these shows to give you validation, Spence. I want them to give you a sense of value and people respecting your opinions, because I'm not sure that's something that I put across the mic enough, and I should perhaps take notice of the listeners and viewers and their comments and read them and not laugh at them every time I see Spence's name come up. That's it for episode 5 of Talk Boxing. Make sure you keep liking and subscribing, and of course keep leaving those questions in the comment section below. But me, the little fella, see you next week.